Hello to all my wonderful Patreon supporters. I'm so sorry it's been a little while. I know it's not really fair to say I've had a lot going on. That is the reality. I'm here today with another foreign poem to talk about with you, and that is haiku. No, I'm not just copping out. Haiku is a really interesting form and one that I really love, but that I find really difficult to write. And that is because when you translate it over to English, we've distilled it down to a poem with 575 syllables, which in Japanese, that's not what a haiku is at all. So I want to talk a little bit about at least my understanding of haiku, kind of where it comes from, and get into that today with you. So Japanese is a language that is a little more limited than English. It has fewer sounds to it, and all of the sounds are kind of grouped together. It's not quite as character-based as, say, Chinese, but the writing system in Japanese comes from a similar place. It's sort of characters and each one stands for a sound. Japanese is also a fairly spiritual culture. Shintoism is the main religion, and it's kind of the religion that just it's practiced whether or not you practice it or not. Like even people who might be like a Christian would also go to the temple on New Year's or to pray before a test. There are a lot of like little shrines to things. Businesses will have little shrines to just pray that things go well for the business, and people will pray for like good grades and things, and that's just a normal ingrained part of the culture. There's not a lot of like super strong religion. There's more of just a general sense of spiritualism, and a lot of that is tied to like nature and seasons. A lot of shrines will be like dedicated to maybe fox spirits or a raccoon spirit or something like that. And a lot of the times of the years that people go to these temples is tied into seasons, such as like with New Year's, people will go to the shrine visits, and I believe during the summer there'll be festivals that are often tied to shrines. Now, because seasons are very, very important to Japanese culture, nature is very, very important to Japanese culture, you have things like famously Hanami, where when the cherry blossoms bloom for like a week out of the year, it's such a short period of time. If you ever get to go see it, it is phenomenal. I had the immense privilege once. Just stunning, absolutely incredible. But people will en masse go and take the time to appreciate the cherry blossoms, have massive picnics beneath the cherry blossoms. Like, it's a huge part of the culture to stop and appreciate the seasons as they change. Hanami is really the like super well-known one, big tourist trap, but they do the same kind of thing when the autumn leaves change, and just each of the seasons kind of has its own slow appreciation. And so haiku really ties into that. The cultural aspect is very, very strong. Haiku is very much a sitting and contemplating within a moment in nature. That's what a haiku is. The way the language is structured is kind of how the poem then became this little short burst of feeling. It's typically written, and because Japanese is read from right to left rather than left to right, it'll be like 3 lines down the page would be traditional haiku are written that way. And so oftentimes you'll see the ones, and sometimes it's less. I've definitely seen ones that are less or more, but typically there'll be some kind of a picture and then the poem as like a contemplation on the picture. That's very, very traditional for haiku. But the like sitting in a moment and having some kind of reaction to the kind of nature going on is really where the heart of haiku comes from. Translating it over to English just wasn't easy, and they teach it in school as 575 syllable poems. And you lose a lot of that aspect where the actual structure of the haiku is less important in Japanese than the act of contemplation and of capturing the feeling of the moment and the relation of humanity to nature. And that really is where haiku thrives. Now, it doesn't translate over well. Like, in order for us to kind of encapsulate the same thing in English-based languages, in Western languages, we do have the syllable count to kind of try to mimic what Japanese is doing. But the main thing is, within the structure that we've attempted to translate over, we don't want to lose the heart of what this form is all about. And a lot of that comes back to understanding like what culture the poems came from, and just the importance of appreciating the natural world around you and really taking the time to reflect upon yourself in relation to that. So when you go to sit down to write a haiku, even though we are following that form, the more important thing is to kind of poignantly reflect upon nature. And I think it's really hard. Short poems to me are really, really hard. And especially ones like this, where there is a definite need for the poignancy. There's a definite need for you to not cram, but to open up this thoughtfulness in a very tiny little package. It's something that when you read a haiku that is really done well, and this is so hard because there's no translation that is going to be absolutely perfect. Japanese is a vastly different language from English. Like I said, there's a more limited number of sounds in Japanese. They just simply don't have a lot of sounds that English does, but that gives a lot of lending to being able to do things like rhyming words together. Especially when every word ends with a vowel sound, you have a much easier time with these kinds of things. So when we're writing haiku in English, we have to start with that idea that like you're taking a piece of nature, and that is something that is pretty vital to a haiku. If you're taking yourself completely out of nature, like what is the reflection that still kind of ties into that same spiritual sense? You need to really think about it with this form because it is so tiny. I'll read you an example, and I think that this is, I think, the best known haiku that was ever translated, because this is one that like I definitely heard as an example. And it does not follow the same syllable count because it's being translated over, but old pond, frog leaps in, water's sound. And here's another one I'll read for you. The wind of Fuji, I've brought on my fan, a gift from Edo. Fuji no kaze ya ogi ni noste Edo miyage. My Japanese is awkward, but hopefully that helps. But so things we need to keep in mind when we are writing in haiku is that even though it's short, there is a need for some kind of a movement and a poignancy to come across. And it very much isn't easy. It's not a simple form. I struggle with it horribly because fitting in the syllables and also the message isn't easy at all. I went ahead and tried one. I don't think it's the best one, but this is going to be my haiku that is written in the 575. And I wrote this over Christmas, so it has a Christmassy theme. I could have done this video for December like I intended to, but I'm very, very sorry and I haven't. This is my haiku. The lights on the trees blink a very merry song. Once again, I am cold. Have you tried to write haiku before, and what exactly were you taught about haiku? Like, what kinds of attempts have you made? Do you know a lot about Japanese culture? Do you feel like now that so much of poetry has kind of intermixed, so many people are attempting haiku, do you think we need to keep in mind the traditional sense, or do you think this is one of the forms that can easily pull away, and like the refrigerator haiku counts as a haiku because it follows the 575? Though, if you don't know which one I'm talking about, it's not a haiku. It goes, haiku are easy, but sometimes they don't make sense. Refrigerator. You know, it's clever for what people are teaching in school, but not actually what haiku is and what haiku can be. And so I think it's a form that deserves a little bit more respect, especially because it comes from a very spiritual place, from a very spiritual culture, and from a place of just deep, deep consideration of nature, which is something we can all definitely pay more attention to, especially as next month we'll be heading into spring. And that is, of course, when Hanami is going to be, usually late March into early April. And so maybe we can all enjoy nature as the flowers begin to bloom and write haiku ourselves. That's all from me today. Thank you so much for all of your support. And don't forget that you can always send me your poems if you are at the $5 and above level, any poetry that you want me to look at and critique for you, you can definitely just email that to me. So don't be shy. I will get back to you as soon as possible with that. And again, thank you so much for all of your love and support. And I will talk to you again soon. I will get back into doing more poem videos again soon. I was just a little off kilter for a bit, but I'm back. So thank you once again. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.